Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leyland brothers. Whatever it is that you want to see, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. No matter whatever that happens to be, ask the Leyland brothers. Come on, me in and join in the fun. Travel all over Australia.
In this episode of Ask the Leyland Brothers, we have some interesting stories for you. We've had many requests to see something about dinosaurs. Well, we're going to Gordon here in Victoria, where we've found a man who actually makes dinosaurs. He's in the process of building a prehistoric park. We're going down to have a look at this man and see how he makes these dinosaurs.
And then we travel to Western New South Wales to Forbes. There we visit the Lachlan Vintage Village. This is a village which recreates the lifestyle of 100 years ago. But we look not only at the lifestyle of the township, but also at what it was like for the farming community. We see how a farm would have been operated using nothing but horsepower. As a wildlife cameraman, you always dream of getting an unusual animal shot. It would have been great to be able to film the old dinosaurs, but of course today that isn't possible. The nearest you can come to it is on the highway between Melbourne and Ballarat, at the small township of Gordon. We found out about it from Paul and Adrian Turk of Bayswater in Victoria. They wrote and said, "We have heard about a man in Ballarat who is making some big model dinosaurs. As we're very interested in dinosaurs, we wondered if you could show them on television." Well, Paul and Adrian, we're going to have a look at these models for you now.
We had no trouble finding the place. The 22-metre long model of a Brontosaurus is clearly visible from the highway. These dinosaur models are made of fiberglass and have all been built by Bill Myers, an ex-Sydney man who owned a knitwear factory. With the support of his wife Stephanie, he decided to build a prehistoric park. When Bill checked on the availability of dinosaur models in America, he found the enormous cost in buying and shipping them out here was hundreds of thousands of dollars. Undaunted, Bill set out to build his own models. Bill works outside with the fiberglass to build his prehistoric creatures. Many hours of painstaking work are required to make even the smallest of the models. Bill tells us about the difficulties in building his dinosaurs.
When we started, it seemed a mammoth task to build these huge creatures, but well, we bought ourselves half a dozen books, whatever there was available, and we got the pictures, different angles, and from there I made sketch drawings. And of course, once I had the sketches and the dimensions right, it was a simple task in a way to simply get started. I made them the right size as they used to be and roam the earth. Everyone is the right and correct size.
We take a walk through Bill's land of prehistoric animals.
Well, this is the first one I've made, and he's called the Pteranodon. And the big side thing you see here, that I believe naturalists assume that it was used to cool the body down. Well, this is the biggest, and he was the biggest. And he's measuring 70 feet long, and his name is called Brontosaurus. And have a look at his feet. They must be about twice the size of foot of an elephant. And this fellow, he would eat all day long. Due to his small head, he had to eat just to fill his enormous bite. Apart from being the largest animal I've done, he was also the most difficult to construct. And again, mind it, due to his size. When we worked up top, we had to move the 12-foot ladders from one side to the other. When we did some underbelly work, we had to call a crane in to lean him onto his side to be able to do the bottom part. And generally, he was very, very difficult, and it took us the longest to build. Well, it was, I think, about 6 months up to this stage, and as you can see, he's not quite finished yet.
Bill and Stephanie live in a caravan amongst the creatures they have created. Duke, the watchdog, takes the large beasts in his stride. The 10-metre-long Triceratops was herbivorous, but it was always fighting with Tyrannosaurus Rex. Their skeletons have often been found together, where they had died locked in battle. Stegosaurus was also a vegetarian and relied on his massive shields for protection. The spiked tail was a formidable weapon in a fight. The flying reptile called Pteranodon had a 6-metre wingspan and was covered in leathery skin, not feathers. These fierce-looking creatures were harmless enough, being vegetarians, but there was one to be wary of.
Well, this is Tyrannosaurus Rex. He was the tallest of them all. He stands nearly 20 feet tall, and he was the only carnivorous one of them. You wouldn't have to be afraid of anyone else except this fellow here. He was a very, very dangerous one. And we had quite some trouble constructing him because of his enormous height. We couldn't attach the legs when he was up. We had to attach the legs as he was lying down on the ground, and then we weren't too sure how he'd come out because we couldn't see him till he was up again, and then it was too late.
The collection of fiberglass dinosaurs by Bill Meyer is sure to create a lot of interest with people travelling between Melbourne and Ballarat. A place to step back to the days of the dinosaur in Victoria.
We've come to Forbes in New South Wales to answer one of many requests we've had to come to see the Lachlan Vintage Village here. This request from Andrew Sutton brings us here. He said, I made a visit to the Lachlan Vintage Village recently and was most impressed with the Clydesdale horses and the working farm. Could you please show this on your program? Well, we are going to take a look at working Clydesdales and also at the early days of the gold mining era depicted here in Forbes.
Crossing the old-style suspension bridge to enter the vintage village is meant to be like crossing a time barrier. From here on, all things encountered on the visit come from the past, from the period between 1860 and 1900. The age of steam is very much in evidence. This steam train offers visitors the best way to take a look at the overall layout of the 200-acre development. Far side of the complex is the blacksmith shop and the end of the rail line. Here we can make our way back through the village on foot. Steam power was very much a part of the development of the West, and for a long time the heavy and powerful machines worked alongside the horses which they eventually replaced. The blacksmith was one of the most important members of the early town communities. He kept both horses and machines running. And the blacksmith here is equipped with steam-driven power tools. He hammers, stretches and shapes the steel using both traditional manpower and the steam-driven hammers which were commonplace in the late 19th century blacksmith shops. Shops in the town are not only authentic replicas of old Forbes traders, but offer a varied range of merchandise for sale to the visitors. Every building in the town is constructed using precisely the same materials and methods which were used during the period they depict. Thatched roofs were one of the many roofing methods used by the gold rush diggers to build homes in the hustle and bustle of the gold mining days in early Forbes. A horse-drawn wagon circles the township, offering regular transport about the village. Regular times through the day, demonstrations of hand shearing are given in the shearing shed at the farm on the complex. Here, the old razor-sharp hand shears are used to remove the fleece. The famous bushranger Ben Hall is closely associated with Forbes district, for it was here that he terrorised the locals for 3 years, and this hut is an exact replica of the one he lived in. Inside, it's a primitive 2-room affair with nothing more than the basic necessities. The roof was made of stringy bark and required constant attention to keep it in good repair. The hut was burned by troopers when Hall was in jail, and it was this act which turned him to bushranging. Every building here is a copy of one which existed in Forbes, and this is the undertaker who buried Ben Hall when he was finally killed.
The fact that Ben Hall was declared an outlaw meant that he could be shot on sight by anybody. And that in fact happened on the 5th of May 1865. Here in Forbes, outside the vintage village, in the graveyard, is Ben Hall's grave, his final resting place.
Ben Hall was killed with no less than 36 troopers' bullets. He was riddled with lead while asleep. Gold was the inspiration which brought over 30,000 enthusiastic diggers to Forbes in the 1860s, and here, as part of the village, we can see what methods of gold extraction were used. Among them is this steam-powered ore crusher, which is also run every day for visitors to see just how things were done in those rip-roaring days. As mining became more difficult and the gold more elusive, labour-saving methods of shifting tons of ore became a necessity. Horsepower was put to use with this simple oversized winch known as a whim. As the horse walks in circles, so the ropes raise and lower buckets from the mine shafts.
The whim is one of the early Australian inventions from the mining era, and it's also the first chance the visitor gets to have a look at the Clydesdales at work here at the Lachlan Vintage Village. In a moment we'll take a second look at the village, but in particular at the working farm where the Clydesdales work all year round.
When the gold rush was over, many of the miners stayed on in the west of New South Wales and turned their hand to farming. Here at the Lachlan Vintage Village, the Norris family demonstrates the traditional farming methods which were in use 100 years ago by working a complete farming operation with Clydesdale horses. This 3-furrow plough, pulled by 5 Clydesdales, was a popular type in common use on small farms. The Norris family came to Australia as free settlers in 1849. James Norris took up land and worked it with Clydesdales in those pioneering days. Today, horses from his bloodline are used here at the village and are worked by his grandson, Wilf Norris.
Well, the setup you've got here with all your horses as a working farm, that must be pretty unique anywhere in Australia, isn't it?
Yes, it would be. Yeah.
And what makes you still work with horses now when most people prefer tractors?
Well, I'm very dedicated to my horses. I just like the draft horse and always did. I don't know, I just sometimes I think I should have been born 100 years ago. But
did you inherit the sort of love of horses from your father?
Yes.
And it's always been in the family then?
Yes. These horses are bred down from my father's team and some from my grandfather's team.
How efficient do you think the horses are on a working farm compared to tractors?
Oh, well, to be a horse farmer, you've got to be very energetic and you've got to work long hours.
It's a longer day then?
Yeah. Where an average farmer today couldn't afford to pay men to drive a team of horses.
Wilf is the first to admit that tractors are faster and require less labour. But ever since he started working a team of horses at the age of 14, Wilf has loved his horses and wouldn't give them up now for anything. His two sons, Bill and Laurie, are also very keen on the Clydesdales, and it looks as though the Norris family and horses will continue for at least another generation. This header is one of the first Mackay headers to come into the Forbes district and is now used to head the wheat from the demonstration fields. When first introduced, this machine reduced the cost of harvesting wheat from 14 pence to 4 pence a bushel and made the possibility of export for Australian wheat a reality for the first time. With a practised hand, Wilf sews up the bags ready to be carted back to the sheds. As a youth, he helped his father cultivate 300 acres of land and harvest the wheat every year. Now he passes on the simple skills of his trade to his sons. On a working farm, all the heavy labour is carried out with the help of horsepower, so when it comes time to load the wagon, Wilf utilises an ingenious device to lift the heavy sacks of wheat. In a short time and with a minimum of manhandling, the wagon is loaded and moved off to the storage sheds. A certain amount of the wheat is used to make hay to feed the horses. Here, a reaper binder cuts the hay and ties it into tidy bundles so it can be stooped up. This ingenious device is a huge labour-saving machine, which makes the job of haymaking a fairly fast one. When the sun has done its job and the hay is made, the bundles are gathered up and carted back to the farm to be stacked into round haystacks. Pitching the hay and stacking in the correct manner is an old art which is not known by many of the young farmers these days. Wilf broke his leg this year and confessed this is the first year in 30 that he's been unable to carry out this work himself. He was lucky enough to find 60-year-old Sid Collins, who had the skill and willingness to help out. When the hay is stacked correctly, it sheds water like a thatched roof. From the few acres Wilf keeps cultivated at the village, he's able to provide enough hay for his horses for the whole year. When the time comes to cut the hay on the chaff cutter, it's horses once more which provide the power. This is a two-blade Clyde chaff cutter and is driven by a series of shafts and gears attached to the horseworks outside the shed. Wolf Norris says that he gets a great sense of satisfaction from using the horses for everything on the farm, and points out that a good horse should give 15 to 20 years of service without any trouble, and unlike tractors, will reproduce themselves in that time. There's no doubt that the Clydesdales at the working farm are certainly one of the star attractions at the Lachlan Vintage Village at Forbes.
Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. Travel all over the countryside, ask the Leyland brothers. Whatever it is that you want to see, ask the Leylands, ask the Leylands. No matter whatever that happens to be, ask the Leyland brothers. Come on, be in it and join in the fun. Travel all over Australia.